businesses. I would like to, tell the topic of the panel today is that we have is from the wealth management industry. So that is top trends in that are reshaping wealth management. Are disruption leading to green offshores in wealth advisory business? This panel discussion would be moderated by Mr. Deepak Jain, Director AFM India. And I would like to introduce my speakers. So we have Mr. Anupam Guha. He is Head of Private Wealth Management and Equity Advisory Group, ICICI Securities. We have Mr. George Mitra. He is founder and CEO of Finso. We have Mr. Apur Sahijwani, Senior VP and Head Private Banking, Axis Bank. Mr. Sushmit Mishra, Country Director, Prudent Private Wealth. A very warm welcome to all of you today, sir, to our 8th Annual Wealth Management.
So good afternoon, everyone. Let us start this discussion, which is basically on top trends that are reshaping the wealth management industry. Are disruptions leading to green offshoots? And I have this very distinguished panel with me, and I'll start by asking a very simple question. Is wealth management industry facing disruption both on customer expectation and technology front? And I would ask Mr. Anupam to share his views on the same.
Okay, thanks, Deepak. Thanks for having me on the show. I think technology has played a key role in the change that's happening in the industry today, right? Wealth management per se is a very lucrative business, given that the entry barriers are very low. Very less capital that's needed to start a business, and hence we are seeing a whole lot of players coming in, and especially from the fintech space. So and with fintech coming in, what is also happening is obviously the client expectation is also changing, right? And it's changing not only in wealth management but across, and we are no exception. So from that context, the way I see our industry, one, definitely from a very product centric approach, right? I think it's the user experience that is taking center stage. From very complex solutioning to my sense is the expectation is in simplicity, both in terms of navigation and in terms of advice. Also with digital and news flow happening, I think there is abundance information that's available, I think, and a whole lot of our clients are really struggling to really, with so much of information, really to find what's the right advice. And there, to my mind, active advisory, hyper personalization, I think, is the key to success. And from that context, on a hyper personalization basis, I think with tech, we can clearly see a huge opportunity of wealth management being, and which is also an ICICI Securities private wealth philosophy, is to be a brand-led, platform-led, proposition-led model. Unlike the traditional methodology of only being RM-led, and which is why you are able to bring world-class service, which typically you do to family office clients only. You can democratize it and really give it to a large, section of your client base. Also with, control on advice, and with, large players like us who have years of data available with us, for us to really do some bit of smart data analytics, machine learning, predictive analysis, you are able to create something what we call it as n is equal to 1, right? Which is what we typically call it as hyper personalization. Wherein today, as a wealth management outfit, for every client who comes on the platform, the advice is different, right? It's like when you go to a Facebook, while there is only one Facebook app, but different people, the product is different for everybody, and that is really what the future of wealth management is all about. And I think to us, it is a big opportunity, because one, as India has developed and as the growth is picking up, we see this opportunity on wealth management not only at the higher end but also at the mass affluent end, really being a big opportunity for all of us to kind of play. Financialization is a big play, digitization is a big play, And in that context, I think both advice, tech, client experience are going to change.
Great. George, what is your view on this? Is actually there is a disruption in the wealth management industry, both on the technology and the customer expectation front?
First of all, thank Deepak for having us, and welcome to all the audience. I would like to take off from what Anupam mentioned, and I am absolutely sure of what he's saying is correct, that there is a need for democratization of wealth management. What he said was this entire industry has been led by relationship managers. Uh, but I guess what Anupam was talking about the organized players, the large players who have been doing distribution so long. And the personal touch is what was making a difference in terms of growth. Now, uh, I differ a little bit in terms of that wealth management is actually not a low entry barrier. The costs of actually doing business is extremely high because the relationship manager cost is very high. Second part is that the productivity of a relationship manager actually comes out in 2 or 3 years, not initially. Hence, it actually becomes difficult for expanding the market. And then expansion of the market is very much, I agree with what Anupam is saying, financial inclusion is the need of the day. So we need to have more and more people getting the same level of service as the large wealth firms are able to offer. We do believe that technology is going to be a really important part of this, but we also believe that technology will not be the sole part of having financial inclusion. Because of low financial awareness by the general population, which we have, we would still need a bridge of trust. The bridge of trust could be a brand, as what Anupam mentioned, or it could be the person, independent advisor, who has been servicing these people for years now. So that bridge of trust helps him to give more and do more with the existing clients. Technology has to be the solution because the cost of doing business is going up. You have regulations which are saying that you need to be very clear, are you a distributor or you are an advisor? If you are an advisor, what are the onus in terms of regulations and compliance which has to be maintained? Now, these costs are prohibitively high uh, for anyone to do, and adopting technology is the only way in which you can actually be on the right side of compliance as well as for the clients. So use of technology is in two parts. One is to on the operation side to reduce the costs. Number two is in terms of the client interface. By making your relationship manager or the independent advisor equipped to be able to give the right advice, taking the help of technology. So I believe that we will not have a disruption of a robo advisor being there, but we would see bionic advisors and relationship managers who are equipped with the latest technology to deliver their advice and services at a much lower cost. So that's the way I would take it right now, Deepak.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Now, my next question is to Mr. Susmit. The question is, investors are increasingly valuing holistic advice on how to achieve multiple but often conflicting goals through a range of investment and fund strategies. How can advisors actually deliver it?
Yeah, thank you, Deepak ji, for inviting me to be a part of this panel, and a warm welcome to all the delegates who are attending the session. Hello to George and Anupam both. See, holistic advice has been the hallmark of wealth management. I mean, wealth management is an all-encompassing solution that we try to provide to a customer. It is not a product push. So holistic advice has always been a part of the entire proposition. But one good thing which has happened over the last 8 months, and since we have seen market cycles, moving in such small periods of time, is the overall return expectation of clients have come down substantially. with interest rates hovering near zero in the US, and the Fed is saying that the interest rates will continue to remain very low till maybe 2023. Clients have realized that yes, their return expectations and their understanding of returns has to change. The other thing which has happened, and it has happened for the betterment for the entire industry, is clients have started understanding the word called risk. Earlier, risk was not in the lexicon of clients. I mean, they were just chasing returns. And I still remember 10, 15 years back when we used to meet clients used to tell me, yeah, you just tell me a 25% return will jayega, and then there's no need to discuss anything else. But now the clients are aware about what is the risk of the products, especially in the debt category, as one of the previous speakers in the previous session spoke about. So clients are understanding returns, clients are understanding risk, and clients are also asking us whether we can give them efficient post-tax returns. I mean, how do we structure the same investment in such a way that the returns are tax efficient? So clients are understanding. Our job as advisor is to understand the client's need, understand what is it that they really want. Just I think 6 months back, in the midst of the pandemic, one of the clients came back and told me, "Boss, can we have a return a portfolio which can give me 15-20% return?" And when we went back to the client, his actually the life goals were already, he was on the threshold of achieving his life goals. I mean, there was no need for him to take on extra risk of any sort. So clients are asking for holistic advice. They have been doing so for the last so many decades that we have been in wealth management. And yes, there are conflicting requirements, but I think wealth managers are managing that through knowledge and through consistent interaction with clients.
Great, sir. Uh, my next question is basically a very bold statement which says only 40% of high net worth clients say they are happy with their firm's personalized offerings. Can the industry actually hyper personalize advice? And this is to you, George.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Deepak, my previous organizations, I was in wealth management, I mean, for last 2 decades, and 40% is a very high number. Okay. Usually they are talking about less than 25%. And this got to do with two parts. One part is when things go right, it is always the investor who made the decision. When things go wrong, it's always the advisor who misadvised. This is a general thing. I mean, I would behave the same way. But having said that, you're very right. This two-way communication, and like Susmit actually mentioned this in his opening remarks right now, that the importance of two-way communication cannot be underscored. You always need to be listening to what the client is saying, because then only you can change the way you behave and the offering which is done. So long, and which is again what Anupam had mentioned, the relationship manager actually was the face of the wealth firm for decades. Okay, so responding to the needs of a client as an organization always used to be lagging behind. You had some relationship managers who were good, some who were not so good. In any case, organization learning never used to take place. Hyper localization actually and customization means that the organization itself learns. And this is one of the reasons that you have independent advisors who always had a business proposition despite big brands being there, because they were so close to the client and their responsiveness was much faster. If any organization has to grow, they have to behave like an independent advisor organization where two-way communication results in things being changed. And things do not change in a large organization immediately. So you need to have the tech services which are responsive in nature, and that's where machine learning comes in. Take data in terms of the feedback which is coming in from clients, either directly or through some other surveys and sources, and then respond to that. That's what I feel, Deepak. I mean, this two-way communication has to be improved, which can only happen through technology enablement.
Your take on this, Anupam?
Yeah, so Deepak, if I can just add my 2 bits here. So, there are two broad stakeholders, right? You have the customer on one side, and then you have the offering or, the wealth manager on the other side. Now, on the client side, what is needed is that you need to understand, the client, and no two clients are the same. And from an offering perspective, earlier, what used to happen is that you would typically do a risk profiling. You will bucket them under maybe 4, 5 heads, right from a conservative client to an aggressive client and a balanced client, and you would straitjacket these clients, isn't it? Now, within, say, for example, an aggressive client, the way you may think versus somebody else is very different. And likewise, for a conservative customer, somebody whose life goals are closer to be met, whose liabilities are different, the behavior is so much different, right? And hence, I think what is also needed from a wealth management firm's perspective is that the solution that you provide cannot be just straitjacketed into those 5 product offerings that you have. All of this matchmaking can only happen through technology. Unfortunately, at the scale at which we are talking about, right, it is seemingly very difficult for relationship managers to really go engage, and how else do you then bring standardization, especially given the shortage of talent that we have in the industry and the big opportunity that we have. Hence, tech has to play a role where you try and understand each client differently. You have an offering which you are able to mix and match, and you're able to come closer to what the client needs. So is hyper personalization possible? The answer is yes. It is a journey. I think we are quite distant from what ideally we need to be, or what's the need of the market, or what the client expectations are. But I think wealth outfits who smartly adopt and change their mindset are the ones who would be able to win this game.
Great. So we have Mr. Apurva who's back. Maybe there's some problem technically. So I'll just ask this same very question to you, sir. Is actually hyper personalization of advice possible, and can tech be the only way to do that?
Thanks, Deepakji. It's a pleasure to be here on the panel, and very, very warm good morning to everybody here. I actually heard the fag end of what Anupam was saying, and it can actually took me back to the start of my career, where back then we used to have this one thumb rule, where for any client's asset allocation, we used to do 100 minus his age kind of an approach. I'm sure a lot of you remember those days where we did not have those advanced risk profiling questionnaires or psychometric tests to impart to our clients. And we used to do the same 100 minus the client's age formula for clients, irrespective of what was their financial background, what was their ability to accept risk in their portfolio, what was their liquidity requirement, what were their financial goals. And today, when I look back at what we used to do, it kind of makes me laugh, because then, if you had 2 clients who were 45 years of age, you would give the same 55% equity and 45% debt allocation to both of them. Now we know that's quite suboptimal. The fact of the matter is that our preferences for investments are essentially a function of our own experiences. In fact, I've just finished reading this remarkable book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, where he actually highlights how it is your own experiences which kind of influences what is your preferred asset class. For instance, he highlights how if you've grown up during the period of high inflation, you don't tend to pick bonds in your investment portfolio, or your preference for bonds is quite low, and vice versa. And I think I can relate to this. I mean, having grown up in the 80s and 90s, I know for a fact that we kind of came off a period of hyperinflation at that point in time. But the key here is, how do you kind of apply those learnings, your understanding of investor psychology, your understanding of capital markets, your understanding of the investor's risk preferences, to actually creating a distinct and a very unique kind of an asset allocation for each client. And to me, that really is hyper personalization. To me, that is the way in which you can kind of create a very differentiated kind of an approach, as compared to what is popularly called as the cookie cutter model, which is what we used to practice in the past. So yes, I think we are in an era of hyper personalization, and I think this era is here to stay. As Anupam rightly mentioned, it's a journey, it's not a destination. It is something which will we will only improve with it with the passage of time and with increasing practice. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Surya. My next question is to Mr. Susmit. You represent an organization called Prudent, and this is an apt question to ask you. Advisors are aging and leaving the industry faster than what industry is able to renew them. Also, wealth is about to change hands. It's going from one generation to another. How are wealth management organizations and industry in total preparing for this change?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question and a very tricky question to that. Advisors aging, yes, independent financial advisors who have been in the industry for 20, 30, maybe longer number of years, they are aging, and the challenge with them is they are unable to build a succession plan within their own organization. So there is a challenge with independent financial advisors, but however, what we need to understand is any wealth management company has two parts to the entire equation. One is the skill and the relationship management of the advisor. The other is the services and the transaction and the platform that the organization has. So there has to be a distance between the person and the institution. So there we are seeing some challenges, because for many of the clients, the advisor is the person and advisor also the institution in that sense. So there we are, talking to these advisors. What we feel for aging advisors is they need to be a part of a larger platform, so that the institution part of it is taken care of. We personally believe that the relationship and the skill part of it is very, very difficult to replace, especially the relationship part of it. Or advisors need to merge within themselves. And we have seen that trend happening in the western part of the country, where many of the large advisors are coming together and creating larger organizations. As far as the wealth changing hands, we have realized that, and many of our clients are 60 plus, 70 plus. One of the best ways that we have tried working is through the estate planning route, and where NextGen also, Vyasji keeps talking to us about this, is how do we involve the next generation through the estate planning, so that when the wealth changes hands from the patriarch to the next generation, they are able to handle that wealth properly. And you spoke about this in the morning, Deepakji, in your inaugural address. And I would just quote one very interesting thing: ki, "Poot saput to kyun then sachiyo, and poot kaput to kyun." So this is what your grandmother told you. So that has stuck in my mind. I think that is something that we need to think about. We are not having enough conversations around it. This is a gray area. The other way we are trying to ensure that the next gen is involved is by starting very young. For example, if somebody say 15, 16, 17, whatever the age might be of the child, we are telling the father, why don't you start even a 500 rupee SIP, not because of the value, but can the person start looking at the investments, understand what mutual funds are, and start at a very young age. So financial literacy at a younger age is becoming very important. Involving the next generation is just last week one of our very large customers said, why don't you open a broking account for my 21-year-old son who has just entered the family business? I'll give him 10 lakh rupees, let him just play around. I'll consider this money lost, but let him learn his lessons. And he has asked us to guide the next generation. So these are certain things which are helping us. But yes, a lot of thought has to go into this. Especially estate planning is one area where we feel we need to understand how this wealth is going to get transferred to the next generation. We have this excellent example of the Black Panther, the actor Chadwick Boseman, who died intestate, and he left around $10 million to his wife. And I believe that money is at the mercy of the courts now. I think that's a classic example that we can use today for understanding this estate planning.
Yes, and for that matter, even Picasso's holdings are right now being fought in courts. So,
right.
Okay, so I put the same question to Mr. Apurva also. How is estate planning becoming more important at the higher level of the society and even maybe in the middle classes?
No, I think it's extremely relevant. The one dimension to estate planning is clearly the impact of taxation. And as we've seen, we are kind of moving towards the same tax regime as is being, practiced across most developed markets. That being the case, the possibility of inheritance tax and estate duty coming back in some shape and form is very much on the table. So that's something which I think is one dimension to the whole discussion on estate planning. The other is the fact that in India we've conventionally seen huge amount of conflict. I mean, one of the largest families in the country has actually kind of had a conflict in terms of division of assets. We've seen this happen time and again, and I think as Indians we are no stranger to the fact that conflict exists in some shape and form. Sometimes it is latent, and sometimes it is quite explicit. So that is another element which one has to take into account. Thirdly is the fact that I think needless to say, I think instances where as we heard Susmiji mention and you've mentioned, I think a classic example of even several centuries later, Picasso's successors fighting for the estate. I think any interstate demise tends to create huge amount of confusion as time goes by. So to my mind, I think the importance of estate planning is very, very critical, and it's something which I think every client should consider. I think as wealth managers, what is important is that we need to explore this, and we need to kind of bring this very latent need forth. There is this tendency to kind of push this into the onto the back burner, kind of procrastinate on this whole discussion. To my mind, I think now is as good a time as any, and I think the pandemic has taught us that we are all mortal. We cannot kind of assume that all of us will live till the ripe old age of 80, 90, 100. And I think this is something which all of us have to realize. So I think it's becoming more and more for wealth managers to bring this need to the fore, and the sooner we start engaging with our clients from this dialogue, the better it is.
Great, great. My next question is, what are the major challenges and opportunities for wealth management industry today? And this question is to Mr. Anupam.
So, Deepakji, the opportunity is really the fact that we have such a large population, and as India progresses and as more Indians become affluent, right, there is a opportunity of handholding them, guiding them, and be their preferred, wealth advisors. So that, to my mind, is the big opportunity. The other big opportunity is really, in times like these, the embracement of technology. Because to my mind, without tech, this game cannot be played well. The opportunity cannot be harnessed. So, as wealth management outfit, the fact that we always would want to, be tech players or invest into technology, that dimension was always there. The intent was there. But I think the acceptance by customers, and somebody was just mentioning that clients today, and especially HNIs and ultra HNIs, are absolutely comfortable doing a, Zoom call and, consider that as a formal engagement. I think really helps you to reach out in a significant manner. The other thing that we just spoke about was the real need of hyper personalization, and I think a lot was spoken about it. Because at the end of the day, each client is different, his needs are different, and they need to be met and be, made to feel special. And lastly, given how the markets are, right? I mean, we haven't really spoken much about market. I think the way we advise our clients also needs to change, both in terms of the product basket, the macro, because, we are living in an era which is extremely dynamic, and also in terms of the delivery of that advice. So from my perspective, these are the large trends that we see it as an opportunity, and anybody who can solve these these issues, these situations, these challenges, I think are going to be the winners, and that is really the big opportunity and the challenge as well.
So George, that was precisely my question. Whatever opportunities Mr. Anupam spoke, are they not challenges? Are they really opportunities?
So the first opportunity which Anupam spoke was that there is a large population which is affluent, and that's no doubt about it. The question is that it's a pyramid, right, in terms of the retail and affluent, accounting for more than 60 to 70% in terms of at least the number of people. The middle class is itself very large, but it's still in terms of the total amount of money a person has is fairly limited. Now, this large part of the pyramid actually does not have exotic needs. They don't have enough money for meeting their financial goals. Forget about passing on to the next generation. Second is, if these people have to be addressed, we are talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. Most organizations which we know of actually are limited to metros and a little bit of tier 1. But the data actually shows the B30, which is the next 30 towns, actually are showing some propensity for savings. Now, addressing it actually becomes almost impossible from the traditional wealth organizations, simply because they are dependent on the outreach from a wealth management service. Now, this is not to say that this bottom of the pyramid, not even the bottom, the middle of the pyramid, actually is not being serviced. They are being serviced. They are being serviced by the person next door who has looked after them through thick and thin. If COVID has taught people the issues, they have understood the fact that how important health is, or a health insurance. Maybe their need might be as simple as getting a health insurance done, or an unemployment benefit may be there, like an NPS may be important to them. Delivering to these people, this broad base of the pyramid is about financial inclusion. Now, we may have seen this episode called Bad Billionaires on India, in terms of we do understand Ponzi schemes which happen. We do understand that people get gypped from small savings which they have. So there is a need by the regulation which is there. What they're doing is to ensuring that regulated investments go to the masses. Now, the only way to do that is to technologically enable people with the who have the last mile connectivity. So I do believe actually that this industry has a lot of opportunity, but it will be from the person next door to the tier one, tier two residents who will able to deliver to their needs. Do small financial plannings, make the SIPs and get it done. Do the simple things which are needed. The large part, the large wealth, the ultra HNIs, that will be taken care of by the organized sector. But if you talk about financial inclusion, it will be by empowering people on the ground.
Great. So we have some questions for the panelists, and I just open this up for any one of you to answer. And the first question is from Mr. Akshat. He is asking what has been the impact of artificial intelligence and blockchain on the operations of wealth management industry in India. Could it disrupt the industry or realign it?
So I like to take that because being from a fintech right now, and we've been working on some of the cutting edge things which are there. Blockchain, at least we have not used in terms of getting authenticity of delivery. Probably that will be more in terms of transfers of money which can actually happen. But we have actually seen AI increasingly being used simply because the amount of data which is coming in to a client or an investor is so much that making sense of it is actually becoming difficult, not only for the client and investor, but as well as the advisor. So using machine learning or AI to filter out data and make it into an actionable insight is something which we are seeing happening quite frequently. In fact, we just implemented our first neural net for that.
Right. There's a yeah. Please go ahead.
No.
Go
Say,
ahead.
just to add to what George was saying. So, say for example, for ICICI Securities, right, we have some 50 lakh customers. For us to really do hyper personalization, it is humanly impossible, right? You cannot work on this data, but that is really our strength, because it's 2 decades of client acquisition, clients coming on ICICI Direct as a platform, and it is here that if you can smartly use AI, ML, you are able to really hyper personalize. You're able to take insights and convert it into actionable for the client. And really, if you're able to advise well, you will be able to bring that stickiness. So that really was my perspective as well.
So this is the last question for the panel, and it's something which many of them want to know. And the question is, there are so many direct platforms, and competition is getting tough. How to choose the right platform to do your wealth management and financial planning?
Deepakji, allow me to make an
Yeah,
effort to answer that question. I
Yeah.
think the answer to this is evolution, if you ask me, because challenges will be there. And I think today, as wealth managers, all of us have to look at evolving. I think to my mind, all these years, all wealth managers have had a bit of a myopic view when it came to looking at their clients' portfolio. As wealth managers, we've been accustomed to looking at only the asset side of our client's balance sheet, right? We only look at the investments that the client makes. What about the liabilities that the client has? To my mind, I think this is the time for us to evolve, to become complete wealth managers and look at both sides of the client's balance sheet. Additionally, I was reading a very interesting report by Capgemini, which actually highlights how clients are willing to pay for value-added services. We talked about estate planning, for instance. I think it's a huge value add to offer to clients. We haven't even talked about what clients can do through offshore investing. We haven't even talked about what clients can do through, let's say, real estate advisory. I think bundling all these services and then giving these to clients is something which, to my mind, all wealth managers should practice, because it's all about value addition. I mean, if today you are able to add value to the client, and I think we've come to an era where clients are willing to pay for the value-added services that we can extend to them. So if your view is going to be that there is competition from direct, I honestly think you really need to start evolving and looking at everything else that you can do for your clients. To my mind, I think this is one solution with which we can really kind of offer a more evolved platform to our clients.
Deepak, just a quick one, just to build on what Apurva said. I think I completely agree with him. Just that if the client is just looking at the cost, that means the client is not valuing your advice. So he's ready to let go of your advice for the sake of saving whatever few pennies. So we need to, I think, invest in ourselves, and one of the ways that AFM is doing a great job in terms of skilling people how to understand financial statements, how to understand the whole wealth management game. That has to be, I think, I think it's a reflection of the advisor. If the client is only looking at cost, so the advisor, as Apurva said, has to evolve over a period of time and give quality advice which the client will value and understand.
Thanks a lot, all of you. We are running out of time. Thanks a lot for being part of this.